This is HBR News number 504. Scott Adams' cancer diagnosis. Trump hosts a movie night for Ramaposa, where we discuss the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. I hope you guys are doing well this week and that you are laughing at all of this absurdity so that you are not consumed by it. Your host, Brian. I'm joined by my lovely co-hosts, Hannah and Dr. Ramaposa.
Hello.
And today on HBR News, we have a lot going on. Super packed show. Lots happened, and I had to even leave some things on the wayside. They may come up in passing, but we're going to ignore, try to ignore whatever I didn't choose, because there's a lot going on. This week, we're going to be discussing the, according to the media, ambush of South African President Cyril Ramaphosa by President Trump. Male loneliness is now being recognized and acknowledged by the mainstream. Scott Adams gets very unfortunate news and more, so stick around. It's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron-only show. So this is another one of the stories that I was going to do for the show, but I'm going to do it for the patron show. At least something we can start to talk about. Apparently, as South Korea gets ready to vote, women don't like the choices. Women took the lead in the protests against South Korea's last president, but the men running to replace him are saying little about the discrimination they face. So, women dissatisfied, even in probably the country that is on the, let's say, the runaway train to hell right off a cliff because of the way that feminism has affected its population. Because I'm going to say it right now. I think that's the problem. I don't think it's the men or the patriarchy. I think it's feminism that has completely poisoned women against their own men, which is why South Korea has worse birth rates than North Korea.
and feminism is a form of communism. So it's probably being inflicted on us by the many communist nations of the world, especially China. This has been going on since the Cold War. We like to think we won the Cold War, but we didn't, because communism just changed from class-based communism to sex-based communism and then race-based communism. And this is probably largely, China working on Sun Tzu's art of war, wage war against people without ever having to actually fight anyone, just convince them that men are toxic and that their own race is toxic. And this is still playing out in the proxy war between North Korea and South Korea. So I do have some sympathy for South Korea because they're facing the same problems as the rest of us. Yeah.
Yes. So if you want to get into this article and do a bit more of a deeper discussion, you have to become a Badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com /subscribe and starting a membership. $5 a month will get you into the Discord server where you'll be able to enjoy all of the additional content like patron shows, and there are various activities as well as ways to interact with all of us and our lovely community. And if you don't want to wake up one morning to find that we have been completely erased from the internet by the three-letter agencies that are watching right now, hi feds, then please go to badgerfeed.com or honeybadgerradio.com, which is where our content lives. That's feedthebadger.com, feedthebadger.com /subscribe to join us, feedthebadger.com /just the tip to send us a message, and honeybadgerradio.com or badgerfeed.com to look at the archived content. All right. With all that out of the way, let us get into today's stories because we got a few and it's kind of a lot. Okay. So on May 21st, 2025, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, it looks like a PH sound, but I've heard it pronounced with a P, so I'm just going to say Ramaphosa, visited the Oval Office to discuss trade and bilateral relations with U.S. President Donald Trump, aiming to reset strained ties. The meeting, initially cordial, with Ramaphosa gifting Trump a golf book and bringing South African golfers Ernie Els and Retief Goosen, took a dramatic turn when Trump confronted Ramaphosa with claims of ethnic cleansing against Afrikaner farmers. Trump dimmed the lights and played a video featuring politician Julius Malema chanting "Kill the Boer" and images of white crosses, which he claimed were burial sites of murdered white farmers. He also presented articles alleging widespread violence against South Africans, claims amplified by figures like Elon Musk, who was present but silent. Ramaposa remained composed, denying the genocide narrative, clarifying that the video clips did not reflect government policy, and emphasizing that, quote, violent crime in South Africa affects all races, with black citizens bearing the brunt, end quote. The South African government, through Ramaphosa and his delegation, firmly rejected Trump's allegations, with Ramaphosa citing South Africa's multi party democracy and noting that the inflammatory rhetoric came from opposition figures, not official policy. Agriculture Minister John Steenhuisen and businessman Johan Rupert supported this, highlighting that crime is not racially targeted and that most victims are black. Ramaphosa later described the visit as a great success for re engaging with the US, downplaying the confrontation and expressing hope for future talks, including at the G20 summit in Johannesburg. South African media and analysts praised Ramaphosa's calm diplomacy, but expressed frustration over the focus on discredited claims, according to them, with some questioning the visit's value given Trump's fixation on racial narratives over trade discussions. The government has since made it illegal to spread misinformation about the ethnic cleansing and land seizures taking place in the region.
Yeah, a few days later, Ramaphosa spoke to the press, and he said, well, he said a couple of things. He said, quote, that, I'll try and do the accent, that slogan, kill the boer, kill the farmer, is a liberation chant. It's not meant to be a message that elicits or calls upon anyone to go and be killed. Now, that's a stretch. Seems like a stretch. Here in the West, we have popular liberation chants too, along the lines of those who died are justified for wearing the badge that they're chosen whites. Some of those who work forces are the same that burn crosses, killing in the name of fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. We have many a song along those lines, the lines of we don't want to be killed. Like we want to liberate ourselves from being killed. And we're actually rather gosh darn angry about being killed and so on. But even Rage Against the Machine, hypocritical communist bootlicking faggots though they are, never went so far as to say, let's kill the white people. Because that's not really liberation, except liberating white people from their lives. It's not even retribution. It's just racist genocide. The vast majority of white people in America and the West have never lifted a finger against anyone. It's your government that kills and robs whoever the fuck they can kill and rob to achieve absolute power, including its own people, especially its own people. The musical chants that become popular in the West are the ones that call for the reduction of big government hegemony, unless, of course, that big government hegemony is communist in nature. Obviously, that's fine. And another quote from Cyril Ramaphosa in that same press interaction: "We follow the dictates of our constitution because we are a constitutional state. We're a country where freedom of expression is the bedrock of our constitutional arrangement." Now, that's a compelling argument. It's the kind of argument you would expect to hear in the USA, what with it being a constitutional republic, and indeed in the UK, what with it being a constitutional monarchy. But it's not what we hear, is it? Bear in mind that this isn't a rock band we're talking about in South Africa that's saying this shit. It's a governmental party singing about explicit genocide. It's not the ruling party. I believe it's the fourth most popular party, which is why it seems weird for Cyril Ramaphosa to be defending it, what with him being in direct competition with it. You'd think he would take the opportunity to distance himself from his political opponents and from such divisive, well, genocidally divisive rhetoric, so as to secure his popularity with the voters. But he didn't. He's not pampering to the voters who don't want white genocide. He seems to be pampering to the voters who do want white genocide. It's as though there's no American equivalent because you all don't have a fourth party. You have Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, and Independents, which isn't a party.
Green.
But in UK terms, imagine if 2 years ago the Reform Party did a rally, an enormous rally with thousands of people present, and Nigel Farage got on stage and started chanting, "Kill the brown man! Kill the Turkish barber! Shoot to kill! Brr, bah, brr, bah." What do you suppose would happen? I mean, one needn't engage one's imagination. What would happen is the same thing that happened to Lucy Connolly, just for tweeting something spicy to an audience of about 50 people. Or indeed, Wayne O'Rourke. Wait, who the fuck is Wayne O'Rourke? Yeah, he's in prison for the same reason as Lucy Connolly, but nobody gives a shit when it happens to a man. Unless it's Peter Lynch, after he already killed himself in prison, having been put there for the same reason as Lucy Connolly. Nobody gives a shit about a man until it's too late, and they can use his corpse as a soapbox. By the way, happy 5-year anniversary of the death of George Floyd. Pick unrelated. So, yeah, if only Western politicians gave a shit about freedom of expression, or if in the meantime they at least enacted their draconian laws equally among races and sexes, like they don't in South Africa either. I mean, I hope to see it in my lifetime, but in all probability, I will not. And that's why I drink. Dr. Random Account Munted News, Honey Badger Radio.
There we go. Yeah, I think there's a subset of people in the world who have not caught up with a major change that has taken place in the general population. Right? We're not falling for the bullshit anymore. You can't, after the fact, after information has leaked out about an atrocity that your country has committed, call it misinformation and claim that there's a nuance that people are missing and order people to ignore the information that they've seen and believe what the government is telling them or what the establishment media is telling them. And the fact that the size of the crowds that are holding these kill the Boer rallies has been like leaked out in pictures. It's not just people saying, I saw this many people. There are photographs and videos of this all over the internet. And unless, the government of South Africa wants to prove that this is all AI generated fake video made by some group that they can trace it back to or something like that, which I don't believe. I don't think that they're going to get anywhere telling people this is misinformation. And the fact that they do think that they're going to get anywhere telling people this is misinformation and making it illegal to inform people of what's going on in their country, that just makes it worse for them, because the general public and the rest of the nations that are watching this and reacting to it are going to dig their heels in on whatever side they were on before that, right? Before that order, before that law, before that denial. Nobody's going to change their minds. Everybody's going to get deeper into their trenches. And that's basically the thing that's going on in every country, in every political subset, with every issue in every political spectrum everywhere around the world. If information comes out that indicates something is true, and then the establishment tries to cover it up by ordering you to not believe your lying eyes and listen to what they have to say instead, once upon a time, maybe people might have closed their eyes to stuff like that. once upon a time, you might have been able to keep control of the narrative. That's gone forever. You're never going to get it back. And those that, like, I'm kind of glad they don't realize that yet. The lack of realization that you cannot lie your way through this kind of situation where people know what's going on, and it's too late to cover it up. That means that we all have a chance to notice and form our opinions independently, because they're not going to do anything more clever than just order people not to believe their lying eyes and order people to listen to what the official narrative is and just accept it because it's official. So, hopefully these people don't wise up and the rest of the world can move on without them. Because that's basically what needs to happen. And, we've been through this before. I believe it was with Zimbabwe. And there's a pattern that's going to happen here. And we're going to be asked to sympathize after all of the farmers are gone. And the people that remain behind don't know how to farm and they starve. And I'm going to sound like a bitch when people ask me for sympathy for that, because I'm going to tell them to fuck off. They should have learned the first time around. This has been done before. This has been tried before, and it resulted in mass starvation. So, yeah, they can go to hell as far as I'm concerned. And I don't say that very lightly. They already know what's going to happen, and they're going to start asking for aid. I think every country in the world should turn their backs on them and walk away when they ask for aid, because they don't have a right to it. They made their bed, and then they need to lie in it.
So, South Africa has 1,743 registered political parties. And I'm bringing this up because I think all too often people get caught up in the number of parties. And it actually, that they have 1,743 registered political parties. Only 18 of those parties hold seats in the National Assembly. And they are almost all leftist to some degree. So the guy who's calling for ethnic cleansing and land seizures, he is further left. He's a part of a Marxist party than Ramaposa. But Ramaposa is still on the left. So the reason why he's not saying anything is because at the end of the day, they all have the same goal. They just want to get rid of, they all have the same mindset, okay? So if you can look at, for example, the United States has a Green Party and we have our Democrats, right? And there have been attempts to start new parties. Like there are communist parties in the US, they just don't hold any seats. There are, what is it called? Justice Democrats. Like there have been multiple attempts to create more parties, but they're all concerned with government power. So really the differences are like irrelevant, because at the end of the day, Ramaphosa lets these things happen because he wants these outcomes. He wants the land seizures, but he won't do it himself. So he'll let some other guy who's crazier call for the ethnic cleansing of African farmers, Afrikaners. And then he'll just sit there and say, hey man, that's not my party, but I also would like to control these things because I also have, designs on how the state should function. And so once everything is done, I can use that to get power anyway. So if you have 1,743 registered parties and of all of them, you have 3 that are right wing, guess what? And of those 3, I think 1 holds seats, right? And that one is, let me see, I have it here. It's called the Freedom Front Plus. It leans right. So it's not even like a right-wing party. It leans right, focusing on Afrikaner nationalism. Well, if there's no Afrikaners, guess what you don't have? So like my point is that how you organize your parties in your country, if they're all leftist parties, then guess what? You have one fucking party. So like this is why it's important to point this out. So of course Ramaposa is not going to say anything too extreme, but he does have, or at least he claims to have, some plausible deniability. And by the way, if his country is the one that's running the show, and his country's government-owned media says, "Hey, man, it's illegal to spread misinformation about what's going on," then he's basically in on it. So it's sort of irrelevant. He can claim whatever he wants, but basically your country is run by communists that want to kill white people. So you might as well just admit it, or at least stop pretending like that's not what's going on. So anyway, just something to consider. Like, you can have a million parties, but if they're all fucking commie parties, then you only have one fucking party. Okay? But anyway, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. I got a super chat from Zeranx. Thank you. Let me just put it up on the screen here. Oh, it's a membership thing, but thank you for that. He says, not trying to take away from the point. South Africa doesn't like outsiders in general. They killed and chased out non-South Africa. I guess the same year the farmer issue broke.
So that's a little bit off. I'm gonna answer that by reading a comment from X. There's an account called Homath, and it's at it is Homath, and if you're not following that account, you should give it a follow. You'll be glad you did. But Homath says, remember, none of these people lived in South Africa before the white farmers moved there and built it. Not very many people understand history and migration. And then he goes through and points out several facts about this. Although number one was incorrect. He says there was a small population of native Africans. There was nobody. There's nobody there at all, because the land, these were hunter-gatherers. The land didn't give them anything to hunt or gather.
There were some natives, but they were Bushmen who were like from the pre-Stone Age. But it was taken over by Central Africans who didn't have a claim to the land either. But yeah,
right. But the white people moved there and settled it. There were basically no buildings, no cities, no towns, no nothing, no real settlements. White people built a thriving civilization there. And they are the ones, by the way, that figured out how to farm the area. But according to Homath, then other unrelated groups of Africans moved there from far away to get the benefits. This would be like Indians moving to China, and not like a guy from Massachusetts moving to New Hampshire. I believe he's talking about Indians. It was different and a non-native type of person. People who get confused because they think that, quote, Africa is a single category that has a single type of person from it. That's not right. And I'm going to agree with him on that, because in my profession, I've met a lot of people who actually come here to work from different countries in Africa. And there are some people from some countries in Africa who hold other people from other countries in Africa in great disdain because of the differences in their culture. And there are first world countries in Africa, and there are third world countries in Africa, and there are countries that are in worse shape than that. And the reasons are the differences in their culture. So it is a very broad spectrum of people. All right. Homath goes on and says, now they are chanting murder, 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 all the white people. And this is another salient point. This is happening in basically every white country now. This rally is what George Floyd riots were in America. It's the same thing, just not inside of a stadium, because they were running around the community setting everything on fire. He goes on, instead of a song, they go to college and they get taught language like all whiteness is racist, and it's not enough to not be racist. You have to be anti-racist. If you put these two phrases together, it means we have to get rid of white people. They have also started to say that white people are not indigenous to Europe. They don't have, so they don't have the right to live there either, I guess. I hope you all understand this by now, but if you don't, it's a lot more important than anything else that's going on. It was never about sharing or fairness or equality. It was always about getting into a position where they can mass murder whites. And I hate to say this, but I'm going to agree with it. This particular branch of Marxism that has taken hold of minorities in some countries in the world, and including ours, is about eliminating people who are not brown, not black, just white, right? And it is about, like, they've declared white people not indigenous to anywhere, and it's bullshit. And it is about creating hatred and murder. And it's a subset of the population that thinks that if they get rid of the producers of things, they can have all the things the producers made free without having to do the same work that the producers did. And they haven't thought past the point of, if we get rid of all the people who do these things and know how to do these things and are good at doing these things, then where do these things come from? They haven't thought past that point. And then the next step that happens when they get rid of the people who do the things they want and the things they want to take, then they won't have them anymore. And they'll start demanding from the places where those people still are, send it to us from there. Right? That's my rant about, not sending them any aid when this results in mass starvation. That's where that comes from.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, Ramaposa basically showed up to the White House with his hand out. And
Yeah.
Trump basically gave him an opportunity to like acknowledge something that was happening and potentially change it. And this is like what I see is, Trump is showing okay, here's the thing. Trump knows that the United States, other countries need us more than we need them, period. And for a long time, they've just been like taking from us. And he's basically trying to level the playing field in terms of like fair trade. But they need to do stuff for us. Canada has to close their border and secure it because they're letting shit come in here, fentanyl and whatnot. Mexico needs to secure their border. They need to militarize their end so that we don't get more illegal immigration. So like whatever it is he goes to, the European Union, and the Ramaposa goes there with his hand out, and Trump says, look at this, and then he denies it. Now, they're going to talk about, I'm sure that the negotiations will continue, but it's out there now. Like obviously, I understand that, the media is running mad cover and all that, but I think they're losing credibility like at a very fast pace for anybody who's paying attention, not necessarily for like, boomers and shit that are watching CNN, but like anybody who's actually making an effort, they know what's going on. So I think this is absolutely necessary, and I guess we'll see what happens, but we do got to move on to the next story. But let us know what you guys think in the comments about that. I look forward to seeing your thoughts. So we got Scott Adams in the news. He's the creator of Dilbert, the comic strip, and he announced on May 19th during his live stream show, Coffee with Scott Adams, which he used to do like every day, or he does every day, that he has been diagnosed with an aggressive prostate cancer that has metastasized to his bones, giving him a life expectancy of possibly only months, potentially by summer 2025. Adams, who's 67, described the cancer as causing intolerable pain, requiring him to use a walker for mobility, and noted that he has been managing the condition for longer than former President Joe Biden, who was diagnosed, we covered that last week, with a similar form of prostate cancer around the same time. Following his announcement, President Donald Trump personally reached out to Scott Adams, leaving a voicemail identifying himself as, quote, your favorite president, end quote, and later speaking with him twice to offer support and assistance, saying, if you need anything, I'll make it happen. Adams described the calls as fun and incredible, noting Trump's awareness of his situation, but did not disclose specific details of their conversation, citing appropriateness. I don't know if it's related, but I'm just going to mention this anyway. Scott Adams has stated that he did receive a certain jab in a January 2023 YouTube live stream. He confirmed that he got it, but did not receive any follow-up jabs, expressing regret and claiming that the unjabbed individuals came out the best due to natural immunity and concerns about long-term side effects.
Yeah, I don't know how much we can even address.
I'm just. We could just talk
what-
about the Scott Adams' condition, but I want to throw that in there because I don't think it's irrelevant.
I don't know
So,
if we can even address what he's expressed about his turbo cancer or his conclusions as to what has caused it. We're allowed to speculate about the virus and where the virus came from, but we're still not allowed to talk about that serum that was purported to prevent the virus. You will have to listen to Scott Adams talking on the only platforms on which he's allowed to discuss it. And it's left me wondering if Joe Biden is dying from the same turbo cancer for the same reason. I mean, Justin Trudeau and many other world leaders may have been given a fake intravenous procedure just for the publicity, but it makes sense that Joe Biden was given the real intravenous procedure because it didn't matter if he died. He was supposed to die. He had already served his purpose as the functionless puppet of the third Obama regime, and it's under-the-counter grand larceny of the 2020 election. I hope I'm allowed to talk about that. And it was in the interests of that regime that Joe Biden died from the turbo cancer as swiftly as possible and to go on to bequeath his leadership to the illustrious Kamala Harris. It was frankly a miracle that his decrepit skeleton managed to begrudgingly survive for so long. All I ask is that you follow your own advice, dear oh so tolerant masses, and listen to victims, those who have concluded by their own life experience what has happened to them. Scott Adams has stated over and over again that the anti-cow people, the anti-cow procedure interventionists were right and are winning, and were right and winning all along. I'm not happy about this, by the way, speaking as someone who managed to refuse the cow procedure intervention, despite the coercion, despite my separation from the love of my life for 3 of our first 4 years together. When Scott Adams tells me that I'm winning and that I was right all along, I feel no compulsion at all to gloat about it. All I can do is mourn. And not just for the people who are afflicted with cancer or even turbo cancer, not just for the people who were at least given a year or two to come to terms with their mortality and get their affairs in order and say their goodbyes. I'm mourning the people who died suddenly 3 years ago, the people who clutched their chest and started spinning on the spot and collapsed on the floor in a heap of forgotten humanity while their loved ones cried desperately over their bodies, wondering what on earth could have possibly happened, while the government and the mass media told them it's a coincidence, nothing but a tragic coincidence. There's nothing you could have done to prevent this. There's nothing you could have not done that would have not killed them. Sit down, shut up, and get your 19th course of the thing that killed them. I am still too angry to be talking about this. I might always be too angry to talk about this, so I suppose now is as good a time as any, all things considered, to be talking about this. I really hope the day comes when I can talk about this on the internet without dancing around all these euphemisms. And I really hope the day comes when the surviving members of my family can come to terms with what really happened. But that is probably just an unrealistic pipe dream. I'm just going to have to sit here and watch my loved ones die from a series of medical coincidences while I bite my tongue into 1,000 pieces. Never forgive, folks, and never forget. It's not just Dilbert you'll be missing out on. It's your family. Spend as much time with them as you can while you can, because half of them are very probably going to disappear. Don't let this divide you. Let it strengthen you. Be like the wasps who survived the DDT debacle. Become super wasps and report back to me when you have inherited the earth. This message will self-destruct in 10 seconds for the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen.
So something else to know about, he had 2 updates that he posted on his account. One of them actually increases his chances from 0 to 30%. 30% is not great, but it's significantly better than 0. It's significantly better than we're just going to quit here because we don't believe that we can do anything about this. Now, that doesn't necessarily change anything about how this happened. And I also want to point out that it wasn't just the direct connection that caused people to die. There were people during 2020, 2021, 2022 that were denied treatment for cancer and other very serious illnesses because of refusal to have the jab, or because the lockdowns were in place and therefore things were shut down that were considered non-essential, and apparently saving the lives of people who had cancer was one of those things. Like, it was really important for public officials to be able to go to expensive restaurants with their friends, but you couldn't get your chemo if you needed it. Right? That was going on at the time too. Adams hasn't disclosed what this path of treatment is. He says he's not going to be telling the details. Because he says, I think you would know how that would go. And I'm sure there would be people going, oh, that's the wrong treatment. Don't do that. It's not going to work. Or other things like that. He'd be getting mobbed with layman's medical opinions on what he should or should not do. And that's really up to him. But definitely hope that it works for him in any case. So I guess we'll be getting updates as to how it's going and whether or not that survival rate stays the same, or whether they decide to give up, or whether they up his chances over time. But it's very fortunate that if he's having to do something that only has a 30% chance of working, he's able to go the entire course and not have to worry that some stupid lockdown is going to keep him from going for 1 or 2 treatments and create a break in the treatment course and cause him to die because of that.
Well, Trump did say whatever you need. So maybe he made a call. Maybe he offered something. No.
Yeah.
Well, we'll follow up and see, but yeah, I hope he recovers. I hope that at least it's painless if he's got to go, but we'll see as news develops. We'll follow up. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. All right, move on to the next story. This is something I meant to bring up before. I think, this is a short one, but you probably know Susan Brownmiller, who was one of the leading feminists of the 60s or the 70s. Pioneering feminist, journalist, and author, has died on May 24, 2025, at age 90 in a New York hospital due to complications from a fall. Best known for her 1975 book, Against Our Will, Men, Women, and Rape, which redefined rape, certainly it did, as an act of power and violence rather than passion. She sparked national conversations, inspired legal reforms, and influenced feminist activism. Her work, though controversial for its racial dynamics and bold claims, remains a cornerstone of second-wave feminism. Brownmiller, who never married, also wrote Femininity, Waverly Place, and In Our Time, and taught at Pace University in her later years. Also, apparently, she knew Aaron Pitsey and
Yeah.
apologized to her at or something for destroying like our civilization, or at least doing a lot of damage. So yeah, Susan Brownmiller gone. I don't know if you guys want to say anything about that or.
It actually got no feelings whatsoever or thoughts about Susan Brown-Miller's death. Like the main thing I think of when I see her name is that the 2% myth that feminists always throw out there, the myth that only 2% of rape allegations are false, traces back to her, and she didn't have a real source for it. She quoted a police detective who was just making his own personal estimate. It was not even an educated guess, just the attitude of a police officer. And so when feminists say that to you, what they are doing is essentially playing telephone. And if I remember right, later in her life, she didn't even stand by it. So she really only reminds me of people's enthusiasm for grabbing onto any bit of information to justify their own anger and hatred, and putting it out there before it actually can be confirmed or anything. There's not a whole lot else to her. The only other thing that I can remember about Susan Brown-Miller off the top of my head is that her book, was cited in, I believe, 1978 in a hearing to Congress. Congress had the education department or something, some kind of hearing about the education system, where feminists were coming in and testifying to them about intimate partner and sexual violence. And there were quotations taken from her book by feminists to use to convince Congress to make changes in law and policy in regard to the education system. They tried influencing that. They tried making that happen for years and years before the Cleary Act and the Dear Colleague letter ever happened. Like, that was 1978. I was like 6 years old. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like, as far as, she's mostly a blip on my radar as far as the rest of it's concerned.
Well, I will say that this is a good example of how feminists, even if they later on in life decide that they were wrong and maybe they make an apology. Apparently, Susan Brown-Miller apologized to Aaron Pitsey, for example, later in her life, had like I guess a revelation or something. It sort of doesn't matter because if you look her up, no, there is no mention of her going back on the things that she has said or claimed at all. And the only thing that we're going to know is that she basically altered the conversation about rape in such a significant way. And of course, they're going to see her as an icon. So, like, what you have done in your life, you should pay attention to, because if it's evil and you have evil people supporting you that like back up what you say and get excited about it, then no matter what you do later in life to try to change that, unless you make it as vocal and as like public as possible, they will just pretend like you never said that and then continue to lionize the evil that you did. So Susan Brown-Miller could have come forward and made all kinds of apologies and retractions and statements, and it wouldn't matter because the cathedral is going to tell you what the cathedral wants you to know about her, and that's the only thing that matters. So I don't care that she reformed. The damage is done. It's irrelevant. Like, and it was probably when it was safe for her career to do that she came forward anyways, which, casts a little bit of doubt on her actual intentions. I don't think it's a question of integrity anymore. So, I mean, I'm not like, it's a shame. It's always tragic when people pass away. But I imagine that if she had a man in her life, maybe that wouldn't have happened because he would have saved her, but she probably just died alone. For all we know, she was found dead, when she fell and nobody was there. So, and I don't think that that's something that makes me happy. I think it's sad. But what's worse is, again, the legacy that she's left behind, and that's the only thing that feminists will take away from it, is that she is the person that crafted that whole narrative that likely led to, all kinds of stuff like the Mary Koss study and the Me Too movement, etc. So there you go. So yeah, I mean, like, while you're young, I would say look in the mirror and ask yourself, am I wrong about something that's going to be a problem in the future? I mean, I don't think anybody in this chat has to worry about that per se, but like, I think that humility is something we're sorely lacking these days. So, Mike, did you want to say anything about Susan Brown Miller?
No, I got nothing, fucker.
Okay. Well, that's necrophilia. Okay, so moving on to the next story then. Let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. Hold on a second. Yeah, here we go. So, a recent Gallup poll highlighted in a New York Post article from May 25th, 2025, reveals that, shockingly, Gen Z and millennial men in the US are among the loneliest demographics, with 1 in 4 men under 35 reporting significant loneliness compared to 18% of young women and the national average. This loneliness epidemic, declared by a national crisis by former U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy in 2023, is linked to serious health risks like depression, anxiety, and chronic diseases. The article points to societal shifts, such as the decline of traditional community institutions, such as churches, and the economic pressures of unaffordable housing as key contributors. Social media, while fostering connectivity, often exacerbates feelings of isolation through comparison and superficial interactions, particularly impacting young men who face unique pressures to meet traditional expectations of success and stoicism. The poll also notes that the US, alongside Iceland and Denmark, stands out for higher loneliness rates among young men compared to other adults, with 25% of US men under 35 feeling lonely a lot of the previous day. That's weirdly a lot of the previous day. Okay. I don't know, that's kind of strange. Experts suggest that the erosion of social safety nets like community centers and the isolating effects of the pandemic have hit Gen Z particularly hard, disrupting their social development. Young men are also less likely to seek mental health support due to stigma, despite 27% reporting poor mental well-being in a related Deliot survey. A lot of it also has to do with the fact that mental health does not, in fact, serve men at all. It's good if you're a woman because it's tailored to you, but not if you're a man. The article emphasizes the need for societal interventions, such as fostering real-world social places like gyms or hobby groups, to combat this growing issue and help young men build meaningful connections. And notice, I just want to point out, it's not really connecting to women per se. It's just connecting with people in general. So, but anyway, that's the article.
You have to ask yourself what is being measured when it comes to these surveys, and what is not. What questions are they asking? What conclusions are they coming to? And have they sufficiently differentialized between loneliness and being alone? Because these are very different things. Some of the loneliest moments I've ever experienced, nay, most of the loneliest moments I've ever experienced, have been while surrounded by people. It sounds contradictory, almost paradoxical, but anyone who's really been there knows what I'm talking about. Because that's when you realize how truly isolated you are, how divorced you are from the connections you're really looking for, when even in the company of a room full of people, you feel like you're not even in that room because you'd rather be anywhere else. Indeed, you'd rather be on your own. You'd rather be actually alone. And some of the happiest experiences I've ever had, the most transcendent and numinous experiences I've had, have been while completely alone. Most of them, actually. And I'm not just talking about when I've been, higher than a lion in Zion. That's certainly where I've convened with the gods and overcome the fear of death and loss and indeed loneliness itself. But on top of that, most of my creative endeavors, my most sober creative endeavors, have been achieved while completely alone, usually draped over a guitar or slumped in front of a computer, creating the madness that made everyone love me and respect me so. Such is the shaman's journey. You go into the wilderness to be alone. And when you are alone, you find a place where you can never be lonely, because you realize the gods are within you and indeed without you. And the time will come when you see we're all one and life flows on within you and without you. And then you return to your tribe, bearing the gifts that the gods have bestowed upon you in your journey. So I don't mean to downplay the so-called loneliness epidemic that has descended upon men. It does seem to be a thing that is affecting the majority of the male population who would never have experienced the shamanic journey. But I just don't trust the measurements. I think men are being asked, are you alone? And when they say yes, the pollsters are concluding that these men must be lonely. But it's not necessarily so. This is one of the many differences between men and women. And it's why most shamans, historically, have been men. Because men are better suited to solitude than women are. The problem is that successive generations of men have been convinced that they are nothing without women. At the same time, women have been convinced that they are everything without men. This is palpably untrue. In fact, it's an inversion of nature. You only have to look as far as most mammal species, most reptile species, and most species in general, especially the non-social species, like bears and tigers. The females raise the children with a constant feedback loop of love and affection from those children, while the males roam free in the wilderness, completely alone. Obviously, humans are not like this. We are very much a social species. Men and women alike are accustomed to communal living and to cooperate together as a well-oiled unit. But that's a genetic system built on top of what came before it. We were all reptiles once. Men are wired for solitude, if only in moderation. That's why we need our man caves. That's why we need our quests as we run into the unknown, chasing a deer for 10 miles or whatever. So, yeah, fret not, my brothers. Your solitude is not necessarily a crisis. It might be the perfect arena for you to convene with the gods, for you to center yourself, for you to become one with, well, the one that you are and the one that everything arguably is. You can go on to rehabilitate yourself into the collective if and when you're ready to do so. Or if and when the collective can get its sorry ass together and stop being so pathetically and distastefully socialist. If it takes a lifetime, so be it. Brothers, we'll see each other in the next one. Dr. Random McCann, Mounted News, Only Bad Radio.
Yeah, I have to agree on the questioning. Is this real? And I think, part of it, yeah, it probably is, but it may not be as big as they're saying. And there's two courses of action that have taken place over the years that have me pressing X'd out here. And they both start with feminists specifically, but women in general do this. So it's not really necessarily just a feminist thing. Portraying fraternity male brotherhood, right? Male gathering together, group association that happens without female supervision, right? Without female interference, without nagging and pitching a fit because the men are doing something that doesn't necessarily benefit women in any way. That has been portrayed by women for centuries as problematic in some way or another. Oh, the men are getting together without the women, they're going to do something stupid, right? Oh, the men are getting together without the women, they're going to do something bad. They're going to harm women. They're going to use women. They're going to act against women. So in the 20th century, there were groups of women, feminist groups, that filed lawsuit after lawsuit in the United States and other countries. But I think this was one that kind of started in the United States. I might be wrong. But basically, if there were men that had an organized fraternal organization of some sort, fraternal activity of some sort, or fraternal group of some sort, women had to be allowed into it. If it was men only, it couldn't exist, or it had to change. It had to open up, right? And this started with men's clubs, men's professional organizations, men's social organizations, men's educational organizations, anything that men were doing without female involvement, whether it was for work or play or religion or just being together, didn't matter. Women had to be let in. That was one of the two things, all right? That you couldn't have any kind of organization among the guys without female supervision. The other one, and I think this was a little bit more insidious, was the idea that men can't have companionship. It's not companionship if there's not a woman there. And, women engaging in all kinds of activism to force men to live a certain way and force men to provide women with certain benefits and force women to financially support women in certain ways and all kinds of stuff like that. And at the same time, to deny men the benefits of involvement with their families, being the head of a household, raising their own children, having a wife, having a happy home, having a safe haven of their own where they could go someplace alone, even like into the den or into the man cave or even just into their own room, into an office, anything, and have solitude and peace. Men started, creating alternatives to the normally sanctioned by society types of female companionship. And women piped, "Oh, you're going to be lonely without us." Immediately. "Oh, you can't have porn, you can't have sex dolls, you can't have this, you're going to be lonely without us." So I think between those two, there's an obvious underlying, not openly stated, but sort of covertly stated goal of preventing men from just enjoying life out of women's control. And this idea that now there's this sudden epidemic of male loneliness that maybe is caused by the divide between men and women, that sort of plays into that a little bit. Now, does it mean that when you isolate a group of people, when you take away their ability to form friendships, you make friendships with females toxic, all their relationships with females, whether it's just the basic friendship or whether it's intimate partnerships or family relationships that come with blood relations and so on, if you take that and make it toxic, but then you tell them they're not allowed to be friends with each other, well, of course they're going to be lonely. That's the logical conclusion is if you take away every way that a person can have relationships with other people, that will result in loneliness. But to turn around then and say, well, see, men rejected women, now they're lonely, which is, I think, what is the attempt is here. That's bullshit. And the reality is, if men are lonely, it is because women need to get the fuck out of the way when they want to form fraternal friendships, fraternal relationships. Those were what made civilization strong throughout all of human history. Human history was built on the back of fraternal collaboration and cooperation, companionship, trust, the rules of male friendship, the rules of male business dealings, right? The rules even of male frenemyship, where you have different countries that don't get along with each other, don't like each other, don't want anything to do with each other, wish they had each other's land, wish they could eliminate each other, but find a way to maintain peace because they don't want to die. And women have systematically eliminated all of that from modern men's lives. If anything, if there is an epidemic of male loneliness, it's because of female busybodies. And female busybodies need to get the fuck out.
GTFO. Well, I was just gonna say, you know who said that despite being around a lot of people, they often felt lonely or they never felt more alone was Robin
Everyone?
Williams. Robin
Yeah.
Williams. Robin Williams. He famously said that.
One of the most loved men in Hollywood.
Probably not by people in Hollywood, though.
No.
All right. Well, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. And I guess, like, at least people are starting to take notice now that are in the mainstream, like the normies see it. So we'll see. And I do want to say that it is good that they say that there should be places where men can gather, because I think that is crucial. Like, where men can hang out with other men without women's supervision, without women's involvement or whatever. So, all right. And let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. Moving on to the next story. So, there's an article from futurism.com which reports on a United Nations International Labor Organization, so, take it with a grain of salt, study that highlighted a significant gender disparity in AI-driven job automation, with women in wealthy nations facing 3 times the risk of job displacement compared to men. The study notes that 1 in 3 workers in rich countries faces some automation risk compared to a global average of 1 in 4, with women disproportionately affected due to their prevalence in roles like administrative, clerical, and data entry, which are highly susceptible to AI automation. This disparity threatens to exacerbate existing gender inequities, according to the article, as women's jobs are more likely to be replaced, potentially widening the gender pay gap, which persists despite women and men working similar hours, with women's labor often skewed towards unpaid household tasks. So, like, this is the way that the futurism.com article is phrasing it. I'm reading it because I think it's hilarious. This article underscores broader labor market trends driven by AI adoption, noting that over 50% of companies with more than 5,000 employees were using AI by 2024, driven by promises of increased productivity and reduced labor costs. However, this shift has led to fewer full-time salary positions, a rise in gig work, and a record low in young college graduates entering the workforce. This piece warns that without significant changes to the current labor environment, AI could deepen workplace inequality, particularly for women, as tech monopolies dominate. Posts on X echo this concern, emphasizing the need for tech companies and policymakers who address this. Of course, they have nothing to offer, this gender gap to prevent setbacks in workplace equality. The article suggests that proactive measures such as retaining an inclusive AI development are critical to mitigating these risks.
Every time I see AI written, my brain says Al. I really need to cover
Yeah.
that
They gotta
song.
put
You can call
the
me Al.
serifs on the eye. That's why they don't. It doesn't have little serifs on
Yeah,
it.
I need to cover it. I need to cover that Paul Simon song. You can call me AI. I'm gonna figure out a way to.
You know what's funny about the no serif thing? Look, this is something that was told a long time ago, so it may be bullshit today. So just take this with a grain of salt. But it used to be in publishing, if you were publishing for women and you were going to use any font other than the basic, like the font you usually see in novels is like Times New Roman or something along those lines. But if you were publishing in a magazine or publishing articles and stuff for women, you're trying to speak to women, you cut off the serifs. When you're trying to speak to men, you use the serifs. And I don't even remember what the reasoning was behind that. But so all this stuff we're seeing now about AI, we're seeing it on social media. Where not so much in the news, not so much like it's in the news and everything, but I'll bet most of the information that we've heard and seen about AI, it is from social media posts, and those are like if you look at our chat right now, all three of our chats, the YouTube chat, the Rumble chat, the Restream chat, all the text is sans serif, and that seems to be the default because there's other stuff that doesn't show up default sans serif on my computer, and I'm assuming it's because it's expected that if you're on social media, you're female. If you're really getting involved with social media, you must be female. That's just it, right? So, but as far as the job thing, I put this in the chat, and the reason I did is two things. First of all, I just as I'm reading it, I get this this mental image of that kid from The Simpsons. Ha ha. Like I'm sorry, I hate to be that way. And I'm female and I work. My job's not going to be taken up as quickly. I don't even know if it can be done by AI exactly, because a lot of the stuff that I do is physical, hands-on caregiving, like you would do raising your kids. So it's kind of, it would have to be pretty complicated to replace that. More likely, if my job is eliminated by some kind of technological changes, it's going to be because we have some horrifying change to our system that results in like euthanasia guided by eugenics or some shit like that. But data entry probably going to be completely replaced by AI. Any kind of, a lot of the people that, learn to code, they're those guys, the jobs that they were telling people to move to, probably going to be replaced by AI in the future. A lot of artists are going to find themselves competing with AI, and a lot of people are going to be satisfied with the shit that AI produces. Right? A lot of that. There's not going to be, a lot of sit down, the easy road. I like to do this, and that's why I'm trying to get paid for it. Kind of jobs out there. It's going to be the kind of jobs that currently you have to use high incentive pay to get people to do them in order to fill those positions and keep things running that our civilization can't do without, like utilities and waste disposal. Like it'll be a lot longer, and it'll take a lot more complexity before machines completely replace that. And the reason is because there's a lot of stuff that requires a human brain and the discernment of a human brain in order to do those jobs. So, I mean, I don't really feel sorry for the women that are complaining about this. I do, but I don't. Like you kind of made your bed when you picked things that were non-essential or easily replaceable. and supported this idea that your job is somehow equal to the jobs of people who are actually out there picking up garbage cans and putting the garbage into a truck and then putting the can back. Like there's just some things that are harder to replace. And the other thing I will say about this, and probably there's going to be some people that don't like hearing this. Like we have this movement I guess it's all over the world, that's got this idea that because in the distant future, maybe all jobs will be replaced by machines and artificial intelligence, or at least algorithms, because there's a difference. At least that kind of thing. Right? That today there should be some created welfare for everybody, which they've called universal basic income, which is welfare for everybody. And that it should just be paid for by the government. That's not what's going to happen, because the government doesn't have any money. Government doesn't own anything, and the government doesn't produce anything, and it doesn't bring in any income. Okay? It steals using taxation from one group of people and then distributes the booty to pirate booty of taxation that to people that didn't earn it. That is essentially the function of government, modern government. Here and there, it accidentally gives money to people who did earn it, like people in the military who work and get paid for work that they do. But most of the money the government pays out goes to organizations that don't do jack shit. They'll say they're doing things and they don't do them, or they'll say they're doing one set of things and they do something else, but they're not benefiting the people. And you're not going to have a set of money to take from if nobody is working. If there are zero wage earners and zero producers of wealth, there will be zero entities to tax. There will be zero tax dollars coming into the government, and there will be zero tax dollars getting paid out into this universal basic income that everybody thinks that is going to happen in the future. So if you're going to be worried about this, you all should be worried about that. Like this idea of an economy that runs on money that circulates because people first earn it and then spend it. That economy is going to disappear. That's a much bigger deal. And that's something that men should be worried about and working on, because women aren't going to do shit about that either. They don't know how to exist without spending money.
Yeah, no, this is damn it, I'll let Hannah go first. She said most of the things. But
Sorry.
yeah, it's fine. This is what happened when machines took over men's jobs. And I'm not just talking about the 50s. I mean, every time a machine was invented, not just the industrial ones, but the agricultural ones, men invent machines to do the jobs that men used to do. And then women forget that men used to do those jobs. And they forget that men are the ones who create and maintain those machines. And the women go, why do we even need men anymore? And that's probably why empires keep falling, because women can't acknowledge men's ingenuity as those men replace themselves with their own mechanical ingenuity. Same thing happened with the Industrial Revolution. Even when men created machines that relieve women of their duties, washing machines, dishwashers, everything that involves the electrical grid and indoor plumbing, women still go, why do we need men anymore? We have machines and vast grids of infrastructure to do everything, right? But who builds and maintains the machines? Shut up! The magic feminist woman in the sky maintains the machines. And, and then the West worked tirelessly to give women useless jobs in human resources and middle management so as to convince everyone that our civilization could not possibly survive without women doing these jobs. But guess what? Here we are in 2025, and we're finally developing machines that can take over the bullshit administrative jobs that were handed to women half a century earlier. Pardon my balls if I don't give a shit that you poor women's have to go back to doing something useful, like having and raising children. And by the way, you'd better hope to fuck that no one invents any machines that can do that better than women do it. Machines that can gestate human embryos better than women do. Because, damn, if that ever happens, you women will have to face the obsolescence that men have had to face and overcome for thousands of years. And honestly, at that point, we may very well have the Warhammer 40,000 future ahead of us, where we don't need women for anything anymore because we can just reproduce using machines. Why the fuck would we need women for anything else? Hey, your days are numbered, ladies. You better get your shit together as soon as you can. You better show us why the fuck we need you and why the fuck we should want you ever again in the future. Maybe you should try getting back to being nice to us, or at least not ruthlessly hating us and trying to eradicate us from existence. Because if future generations remember anything about the 20th and 21st centuries, they're going to be very skeptical about what the flying fuck is the point in keeping you around as the apparent liability that you are. A few million years from now, we're going to have to escape this solar system and conquer the interstellar universe. And we are most definitely not going to need a bunch of woke skulled Karens nagging us about being nice to the aliens. Fuck the aliens and fuck you.
They probably will.
I fire at them with my +2 fusion cannon. Onward and upward forever. Amen.
I wanted to just
By the way, just
Okay.
a point about like women will say, "Oh, you're never going to reproduce without women." Science is already working on it. Be afraid. That's it. That's all I want to say.
That's fine. So I just want to say that the one job that I look forward to AI actually taking, I hope it does, and I think it might be better for companies to do this, would be human resources.
Yes.
I want AI human resources departments, and if all of the administration stuff goes away and it's replaced by AI, maybe the men can sexually harass the AIs. I guess they wouldn't report it and there wouldn't be an issue with it. So I doubt they would. But that would be, I think that AI could totally do human resources. Honestly. And I think that would be the move right there. So that's what I vote for. My vote is for AI human resources departments.
I would love to see human resources just go back to doing things like payroll, which is actually important, and get out of the employer or the employee interactions altogether, because they're not really handling those very well anyway.
Yep. All right. So anyway, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. And I think that's it for the stories. Actually, we are done with all of them, which is kind of shocking because we're not even at the mark. So we got through this pretty quick. So we're going to head into the patron show because I've had a long day and I'd like to just go to sleep at some point. So I want to thank Mike and Hannah for joining me on the show. I want to thank you guys most of all for tuning in. And again, check it out. We're going to be going to the patron show to look at this article. which is as South Korea gets ready to vote, women don't like the choices. So if you want to join us for that, you have to become a badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com and setting up a monthly subscription. And hopefully we will see you in the Discord server, which you will get an invite for. And if you just want to check out the Discord, you can do that by going to badgernation.online, and maybe you can hang out in there and see if this is a place you would like to see more of. It is definitely active and lots are going on there. So hopefully we will see you all there. So with all that said, if you guys like this video, please hit like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed, hit the bell for notifications, leave us a comment, let us know what you guys think about what we discussed on the show today, and please share this video because sharing is caring. Thank you guys so much for coming on today's episode of HBR News, and we will talk to you all in the next one.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.